to the Psych Yourself Up podcast. I'm your host, SharonB, and I'm a trainee clinical psychologist. In these weekly episodes, we aim to demystify psychological concepts so you can apply them to real life. In today's podcast, we're going to look at affirmations. Now, I feel like every motivational influencer speaks about incorporating affirmations into your morning routine, along with a very expensive green juice. But do affirmations actually work? And if they do, can we use psychology to understand why? So what are affirmations? Now, having a look on the old Google, it just sounds like they're positive phrases or statements used to challenge negative or unhelpful thoughts. Practicing positive affirmations can be really simple, and all you need to do is pick a phrase and repeat it to yourself. Some people do it in the mirror, but others just do it, walking around or whatever. You may choose to use positive affirmations to motivate yourself, encourage positive changes in your life, or boost your self-esteem. Now, looking through the research, I was amazed, genuinely amazed, because I thought it was just this wishy-washy millennial concept that everyone is trying out. But there is actually empirical evidence to back it up. So one study that I found by Al-Belushi et al. In 2020, they found that affirmations help to improve the executive functioning of the powerless. So previous research has shown that lack of power can impact our executive functioning. So in fact, executive functioning are things like our attention, our inhibitory control, our self-regulation, our planning. So all of these higher order cognitive tasks are led by our executive functioning skills. So this study manipulated power by placing participants in a situation where they were either the manager or they were the subordinate. And so if you're a manager, then you would supervise and evaluate the task of the subordinate. And in previous studies, they have found that this was a successful exercise in order to manipulate power. So they then asked half of the low power group to say affirmations prior to completing a Stroop task. Now, the Stroop task is where you have to say the colour of the word rather than reading the word. So say, for example, you had the word red, but in the colour green, you would have to say green and not red. So it's a test of inhibitory control. So it's testing that executive functioning skills. And what they found is that when people in the subordinate group, so the low power group, said the affirmations, their performance on the Stroop task was just as good as the people in the high power group, versus when they didn't say the affirmations and their performance was much lower. So I thought that was a really cool study in showing actually affirmations do seem to have an effect on how we perform. But even better, it's such a simple intervention that can potentially combat some really difficult effects of being in a situation of low power. And this is something that we see, in the workplace, but also globally, and how thinking about wider populations, how that could potentially impact someone and their future. I'm also not suggesting that we can fix everything with affirmations, let me be clear with that, but I just want to highlight that there is research that shows that it is really useful in some cases. So some other research has shown that affirmations are linked to decreased health deteriorating stress. They make us less likely to dismiss harmful health messages, and we respond instead with the intention to change for the better. It's also been shown to be linked with eating more fruit. And it's also been shown to demonstrate lower stress and overthinking, and it makes us more resilient to difficulties when they arise. So all in all, the evidence looks great. But my question is, why does it work? How does repeating phrases in the mirror actually lead us to all of these different outcomes? One of the key psychological theories behind positive affirmations is self-affirmation theory. This was created by Steele in 1988, and this states that people have a fundamental motivation to maintain self-integrity, which is a perception of themselves as good, virtuous, and able to predict and control important outcomes. And what Steele also proposed is that when part of one's self-integrity is threatened, according to self-affirmation theory, people don't need to act defensively. Instead, they can re-establish self-integrity through affirmations of an alternative domain of self-worth. So, in a way, acknowledging that you have multiple facets to your personality. So you're not only a good student, but you're also a good person, a good sister, a good mother, whatever it is. and this should be unrelated to the provoking threat. By self-affirming these other parts of your identity, such as being a good daughter, being a good person, by doing this, you are fulfilling the need to protect your self-integrity in the face of threat. And this can enable people to deal with threatening events and information without resorting to defensive bias. Self-affirmations can take the form of reflections on important or overarching values, such as your relationships or a prized skill. So, in a way, by self-affirming, we're noting other parts of our personality rather than just one identity at the time. And apparently this is why it's successful in helping us be more resilient to difficulties when they arise. Now, another theory which I think is helpful in understanding why affirmations work is cognitive theory. So, with cognitive theory, we stipulate that depression, for example, is explained by a negative view of the self, of others, and of the world. And so when we say these affirmations in the mirror, it may assist in creating more helpful patterns of thought. So rather than being quite one-sided or unbalanced in the way we think, and us saying, oh, I'm stupid, I do everything wrong, affirming that you are not may help to bring your focus to the other areas where you are doing quite well. Because to be fair, we do all have those days where we are a bit, stupid or we're not doing our best, but that's only in one aspect of our life. I mean, I know that there are times when I've completely messed up at work, but then I know that at home I haven't completely messed up because I'm able to, keep myself alive, cook, look after my dog, etc. And so maybe when we say these affirmations in the mirror, it helps us to create a more balanced way of thinking. Now, another thing that I found very interesting is that when people say affirmations, they actually saw changes on their brain. And so there's MRI evidence suggesting that certain neural pathways are increased when people practice self-affirmation tasks. And to be more specific, it is the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. So this is actually in the front of your brain, which is also again interesting because that's where our executive functioning lives, in the front of our brain. But this part of the brain, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, is also involved in positive valuation and self-related information processing. And so maybe this can help to explain why the first study found that people's executive functioning skills increased, maybe because there was already this activation in the front part of the brain. All in all, it looks like there is some science that backs up affirmations. So how do we write an effective affirmation? Tip number 1 is that effective affirmations are written in the first person. So you need to begin your affirmations with I or I am. These statements turn affirmations into statements of identity. Identity statements are powerful motivators for self-change. So some examples of I statements would be, I am secure and confident, I enjoy eating healthy food, I love to exercise, I am loving and compassionate. Tip number 2 is that affirmations are written in the positive, as opposed to the negative. So always state your affirmations in the positive. So for example, instead of saying, I no longer enjoy the taste of cigarettes, you might say, I'm completely free from cigarettes, or I am a healthy person and I love the way my body feels when I make healthy choices. So focusing on the positive. Tip number 3 is that affirmations have an emotional charge. So you need to imbue your affirmations with feeling. Using emotional words in affirmations is really important because of the deep association that we have between emotion words and somatic experiences. So instead of saying, I spend time with my aging parents, try saying, I feel such love and gratitude spending time with my mum and dad. Or instead of saying, I only eat healthy food, which sounds really difficult, try saying, I feel vibrant and alive and energetic when I make healthy choices for me. And finally, tip number 4, affirmations are written in the present tense. So you need to write your affirmations as if they're already happening. So this means affirming, I am happy, I'm confident, instead of 2 months from now, I will be happy and confident. Now, prior to researching for this podcast, I didn't really believe in affirmations. But now that I've done some more research into the science behind it and looking at studies that back up the effects of affirmations, I think I'm going to start incorporating this in my daily routine because why not? It's so quick. Literally spend 3 seconds in the mirror saying all of these positive things. So just to recap what we've gone over today, we've spoken about what affirmations are, so they're positive phrases or statements. We've spoken about some of the benefits. We spoke about this incredible study by Al Belushi, who did this in 2020, where they found that affirmations mitigated the effects of low power on executive functioning tasks. And then we looked at other research, so how it's helpful for health behaviours and also how it can lower stress and overthinking. We then looked at the psychological theory behind it, so looking at self-affirmation theory, which states that people have a fundamental motivation to maintain their self-integrity, and through doing self-affirmations, we're able to pay attention to the other parts of our identity, which helps us be more resilient in the face of difficulties. We also spoke about how with cognitive theory we can have a maybe unhelpful or distorted way of thinking where we only focus on the negative, and so affirmations may help to balance that out. We also found that affirmations had an impact on the brain, and specifically the prefrontal cortex, and the 4 steps for writing an effective affirmation are writing it in first person, writing it in a positive way, writing ones that have an emotional charge, and writing them in the present tense. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget you can follow me over on Instagram at SharonB Psych. I'll be back next week with another episode here on Psych Yourself Up. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time guys, I will speak to you later.